at this thing, I researched that, and I found out since the Emancipation Proclamation that Civil Rights Bill in 1964 was like Civil Rights Bill number 7. So I'm wondering, what happened to the other 6? And why, were they that weak that they had to have a number 7? And then in 1968, there is another Civil Rights Bill. So we're not talking about that. So that happens in 64. Also in 64, President Johnson declares his war on poverty. Now this is huge because there are a lot of people in the country in 1964 who are under the poverty level, and all of them are not black folk. So you've got a lot of people this is going to benefit from. So everybody's excited about it. In 1965, you've got some people down in Montgomery who wanted to protest or exercise their right to vote. Well, they end up going down there, and people are losing their jobs and all sorts of stuff happening. They end up marching. And at one point, they get to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is in 1965. And they are told, you guys can march no further. You have to desist. They're all just standing there. And you see these state troopers with billy clubs in their hands, helmets on, gas masks, and some of them are on horseback. And they're walking towards this crowd. Now, the music doesn't have to start playing for you to realize something's about to happen. The movie Judgment of Nuremberg was being shown on ABC, and it's broken in for a news flash. Before they even start reporting, what you're seeing, state troopers everywhere, tear gas everywhere, billy clubs wailing everywhere, and demonstrators running everywhere. People looked at that and said, this has got to be happening somewhere else in the world. But it was happening right here in the United States, in Alabama, in Montgomery. And so, people are like, man, this is not happening. And they wanted to make this public. They wanted people to see it. It was on national television at that point. Well, President Johnson in 65 ends up signing the Voters' Rights Bill, which means now I can go to the polls and vote and don't have to stand in the booth with somebody next to me saying no, yeah, that one right there. I don't have to worry about it. I can vote for whoever I want to vote for. I can go home after I've voted and not have to come to my house on fire and somebody standing next to me saying, we told you who to vote for, but you didn't listen. I don't have to worry about that because of this Voters' Rights Bill. And this is in 65. And then a few weeks after that, they start rioting in California in Watts. Dr. King goes out there, and what are they telling him? Doc, we don't want you out here. People in 1965 are starting to think that this nonviolent thing is not working. Doc goes out there, and Doc feels like that this thing has to go public. And so he decides to go to Chicago. He moves to Chicago, buys a place in Chicago. Let me just tell you this. The successes that Doc had in the South did not happen in Chicago. As a matter of fact, Chicago probably was not a victory for Dr. King. So that's in 66. 67, still frustration. Doc is starting to get frustrated over this thing. It's 3 years into this war on poverty, and it's becoming apparent that we're not doing anything about poverty. Nothing is happening. 3 years, nothing is happening. There's another war going on at that time, and we're in Southeast Asia, and we're fighting this war in Vietnam. And Doc's argument is this: the reason why we cannot get rid of poverty is because all of our money is going into Southeast Asia. And there are two things that he says about that. He says, number one, he says $53,000 is spent on each person killed in Vietnam, while only $53 is spent on each person classified as poor in this country. Now, I don't know where Doc got his numbers from. If you listen to Doc, he was brilliant. So I don't think he would just make up numbers. But at least it gives us primary sources that he did come out against the Vietnam War, and he did say that the problem was that we were not spending money to get rid of the poverty, and we were spending a lot of money in Vietnam. That's one thing. The other thing was that there was a high percentage of African Americans who were fighting in Vietnam, compared to the population. And what he's saying is, we're sending these young men over to go fight freedom and democracy in Southeast Asia, and we don't extend these same freedoms to our boys in South Georgia and East Harlem. Now, this is Doc's thing now. Now, wait a minute, Doc. They've got black leaders saying, Doc, you need to stick with civil rights and leave the Vietnam War alone. A lot of people were coming out. Contributions to SCLC were starting to drop. This is what Doc says. Doc says other people, if they can't make a stand or they got to go along with the administration, that's their business. But